In today's Bible prayer, we read about a battle between God and the false god Baal. King Ahab is on the throne and he has allowed Baal to be worshipped in Israel alongside the living God. Baal was a god of fertility and of storms. After delivering the winter rains and spring vegetation, Baal was thought to be vanquished for the summer, only to be resurrected the following year. The living God was probably still considered to be the national deity of Israel, but the tradition of the countries around Israel was to have a number of deities for different functions and even for different cities or different families. And Baal was probably worshipped just alongside God. King Ahab's wife, Jezebel, is a passionate worshipper of Baal and seems to have a great deal of influence over Ahab. Under Ahab's reign, the worship of Baal has been reintroduced and is permitted and perhaps even encouraged. But Jezebel is so passionate about her faith that she has been going about and having prophets of the living God killed. Obadiah was the palace administrator, one of Ahab's trusted servants. His name actually means servant of Jehovah, and that suited him very well because he loved God. While Jezebel was killing every one of God's prophets that she could find, Obadiah was saving others by hiding them in caves. There had been a drought and therefore a famine in the land for about 3 years. On God's prompting, a prophet called Elijah had announced the drought, and now God tells him to go and announce its end. This was such a brave thing to do. Elijah went to present himself in front of the king who was allowing God's prophets to be exterminated. Elijah thought he was the only one of God's prophets left and would have been wondering if death was near for him too. But Elijah had listened to God. He had heard God and then did what God said. Elijah tells Ahab to call the people of Israel together on Mount Carmel. Well, Mount Carmel is more of a high ridge than a mountain. It's about 12 miles long with views at the highest point overlooking the Mediterranean. And it's here at this high point that Elijah challenged the 450 prophets of Baal. 450 to 1. God loves it when the odds are stacked against us. It means he can really show without a doubt that he is the only living God. Elijah tells the Baal prophets to build an altar, sacrifice a bull on it, and to ask their God to set light to it. They build the altar, kill the bull, and nothing happens. They pray, they cry out, and they cut themselves as if that will help. And they do this for hours, but still nothing happens. At the end of the day, Elijah builds his own altar, sacrifices another bull, digs a trench around everything and drenches it all in gallons and gallons of water. Then he prays, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God and that you are turning their hearts back again. Elijah's prayer and everything he was doing this day was to save the people of Israel and turn them back to God so that the people of Israel will worship God as their only God. Of course, God instantly sends fire which burns up the sacrifice and all the water. It even burned up the stones that the altar was made of. It was an impressive sight and left the Israelites in awe and turning back to God. Elijah listened to God and then did what God said. He was obedient. He was obedient even when the odds were stacked against him, even when it was likely to cost him his life. Tonight, let's reflect again on Elijah's prayer. Let's make time to listen to God and then to do what he says, even if the odds are stacked against us, especially if the odds are stacked against us. Tomorrow, we read about what happens to Elijah next, after the terrific high of seeing God perform a spectacular miracle. Elijah hits rock bottom.